Hey Brent, do
Hello,
you
friends.
see Kathy's eyes?
Yeah.
You've got Northern Virginia outside your window. Does your sister live right in the city or in outside in Northern Virginia?
They live in Maryland.
Oh,
Yeah. But we're actually at her, my sister's wife's parents' house. Oh my God. So I've been in a house with two dogs, one child under three, and four adults for too long now.
how are you doing there, sis? That seems like a lot.
My nervous system is dysregulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. Um, I'm
Greg
exhausted.
Boss Hog. Gosh, I gotta look at his picture closer. Okay. Reference to Dukes Hazard.
Or maybe it's David Hogg from the DNC, formerly of the DNC.
I
Um,
don't know. I don't even know what you said just then. I don't know what a
I love
dance.
that for you. I think that's incredible. That's better. How are you doing? So you had a last minute work trip.
I did. I had a last minute work trip, flew into Richmond, drove up to Fredericksburg. It was for the company was bidding a job for the Marine Corps. So the three guys that I was coaching on doing this oral presentation were Marine. You know,
Mm.
you'd spend a couple whole days with Marines very often, so that was different. They were nice and it was good. They felt like it helped that I was there, and they felt like they really killed it when they did their thing. So that's good. That's good. And
I
how's
love
your
it.
aside from the being a little bit long because you've been up there? Oh, it's not even been a week, has it? How much
Time is
longer
no
are you
meaning.
there?
I'll be there. I'll be here for 6 more days,
Ah, yeah.
but I'll be with my friends for the last part of it because my sister and the fam is going to visit Niagara Falls.
Oh, I've never been to
Yeah,
Niagara Falls.
me neither. Nor have they.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, up in the Northeast I haven't seen. No, I'm more of a West Coast, Western region girl. So, did you have something? Because if you didn't have something, or you do have something, I also have something, but it's probably not nearly as uh, well thought out, researched, and intelligent as what you have to say. But
That is very sweet, but I again guarantee you that it is not. I mean, so part of the reason I'm so exhausted is that I was sick and then pretty immediately got on the plane to come here.
mm,
And so I'm trying to like crank stuff out for my job, the newsletter. So I did finish the post that I was writing about Deadpool and Wolverine.
Wolverine, I was that.
It's a long one. I would have written a shorter letter, but I ran out of time. Um,
No, see, that is a very important point. I help people with writing and all the time, and they just don't get that, right? It's a way easier to write, just dump stuff on a page. It was the same when I had a television reporter friend. I mean, a newspaper reporter friend. And I was a television reporter, and we'd go cover a trial or something. And I'd say it's a lot harder for me to tell the whole story in a 45-second story than it is for you if you have 20 inches on the paper, you know? So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
it also hurt me that I feel like when the internet was first kind of a thing, people still had that orientation toward brevity, I think, as a holdover from print, where
Yeah.
like words cost money. But then between, I guess, us catching up to the fact that words didn't cost money anymore and the whole SEO thing, suddenly it was profitable to write long. And so I like kinda lost the ability to be concise a little bit just because at work I was always encouraged to go longer and I
Yeah.
just did not have much to say about everything. Um, so now I'm trying to get back into it, into brevity, into concision, but, questionable results. But yeah, what did you have?
Oh, I watched the second season of Buccaneers
Okay.
on Apple TV, and it's very interesting because they take it. I don't know if you're aware, but it's it's a fictionalized dramatic um, program based on an Edith Wharton novel, and it's based on the story of the nouveau riche young women who would go and marry landed gentry and nobility in England who were harder for money, and the Americans would go there and become brides, and then they would get legitimacy because in New York they were being kind of, not really accepted in society. So, but the way they do this one, and there have but been other ones like this, like Catherine the Great with one of the Fanning sisters and some others, where they integrate modern music and some like kind of modern themes. But in this one, it struck me that these girls are just having sex, and I'm like, first of all, and they do talk about how it could ruin them if it's discovered. But I'm thinking, I'd be terrified if you got pregnant, you know? But they do have some themes about how this one woman, she marries a lord and he's abusive and she runs away, but that she is his property and the baby that she gives birth to is his and he has her committed. And so just the idea that women were until, more recently than we like to think, were men's property. But more than that, I thought a lot about how are they running around having sex and then not, you know, that'd be scary. I don't think I would have been able to do that. Worry, I mean, or or the paternity issue, right?
What do you mean the paternity issue? Like, how
Well,
would you prove?
or or disprove, right?
Yeah, I read a really I'm trying to remember. It was definitely about one of King Henry VIII's wives. It was like a biography of her that I read, and or maybe it was like about all of them. But I think it was about Catherine Howard.
Mhm.
Um, but it, or maybe it was anyway. It's something to do with his wives. It could have been about Elizabeth, and Boleyn as part of, but whatever. The point is that I think that there's this idea that nobody had sex before marriage until like 1960, but
Mm,
that is not really accurate. And so, one thing that the book went into is like, we can't know like what percentage of young
yeah.
women in, you know, 1450 France had premarital relations,
Mhm.
but they did a lot of research contemporaneously, um, as part of their trials. So they like talked to women, oh, sorry, they interviewed the wives' caretakers and their tutors and their friends about like, did they have sex before marrying Henry? Because if they did, then that is a violation of their marital vows. They claim to have been virgins, and so if they weren't virgins when they got married, that's
That was
a
the part of the way he could.
that's right. And there's pretty good evidence that a lot of girls would have sexual relations that didn't lead to procreation, and that a lot of young women of the day, even aristocratic women, understood what led to procreation and which didn't. They
Mhm.
understood the pull-out method, they understood, like, oral sex does not lead to procreation, but
Yeah.
vaginal sex does. So, I do think it's, like, the 1 or 0-ness and the total abstinence and chastity is, like, really overrated, and partly it's really overrated because it was a useful fiction, like, you had to maintain the
Mhm.
fiction that you were totally chaste, to maintain your family's reputation, and, like, if one child in a family was seen to be, immoral, then it could upset the likelihood of a advantageous marriage for all of the siblings.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I just thought that that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think the way because the Buccaneers, this adaptation of it on Apple TV is much more salacious than the original novel, and if you compare it to it's not exactly this it's about the same time period as, um,
The novel?
but the other show The Gilded Age,
Mm.
right? So actually, the girl in Gilded Age who gets married and goes and becomes a duchess, there is a character in Buccaneers who marries a duke and becomes a duchess, and just the portrayal of it is very different, right? The woman in the Gilded Age, she's there on her wedding night, and her new husband says, "Well, did your mother explain it to you?" And she said, "Well, she explained it to me that it might hurt." And he says, "Well, only the first time." And she's like completely clueless about it. Whereas the Apple TV one, which is a very similar story about the same kind of women, is meant to be salacious. So it's a very different kind of portrayal of of how it happens. But I do think you're right. I mean, humans are humans. Humans are sexually attracted to people. Humans like sex and, you know,
Well, they're probably both accurate to a percentage of the
yeah.
population. I'm sure there are lots of women who got married knowing nothing. I'm sure there are lots of women who got married knowing a lot. It's the
We just
idea that
happen to
all women
be,
were the same.
yeah. We just happen to be two women who got married and were virgins when we got married.
We are. We found each other.
Which is kind of wild when you think about it. I mean, it's not a, wonder what the percentage of
It's pretty
women who are,
low,
I would think, very low.
but well, actually though, I mean, I was really surprised to find out how many um American men and women have had one partner in their whole lives. It's a pretty large percentage
Oh, really?
actually. Yeah. Uh it's a very large percentage, a surprisingly large percentage that graduate from high school and college never having had sex. It's a very large percentage who have like 2 or 3 partners in their entire
Mhm.
lives. This idea that, like, hookup culture is the norm if you're counting hooking up as having, intercourse, that is not accurate. Like, the vast majority of people are not hooking up. They're having very few partners over the courses of their lives, but there is a small percentage of the population, like 10%, that's high in sociosexuality. So, like, most people don't have a lot of partners and don't particularly want a lot of partners,
Mhm.
but there is a small percentage of the population that wants and has a large number of partners. I'm thinking about it because now there's the body count discourse continues.
Yeah, I always think see, I'm obviously, I wasn't ever part of that, but it seems like a kind of a dumb thing to talk about, or is it why do people talk about it now? Like, I know that like, say, 20 years ago, maybe, I'm 30 years ago, people were doing that because it was a measure like, that was a conversation people might have as they were getting serious because it's kind of a measure of promiscuity or something, right? obviously during the time when, um, in terms of risk to getting sexually transmitted diseases, all those kinds of things, I can kind of see why that conversation was important. Why do people still have it?
I don't know. I hadn't thought to think about it. I mean, I guess like because people are weird and superstitious and judgmental and afraid about sex would be the most obvious answer. But in terms of like why now versus earlier, because it's interesting because I feel like, well, first of all, I don't know how you'd even count the discourse of like 1970, but your average person in 1970 had more partners than your average person today. So we've become less promiscuous on average over time. So you would think that the discourse would be less concerned about a thing that is happening less, but that doesn't seem to be the case. But again, like, how can you compare the newsletters of 1970 to the Twitter of today? Um, yeah, I mean, the thing that I thought was interesting is like people are like, oh, well, first of all, somebody finally quantified it. They were like over 100. There was a discussion about people who have a body count of over 100, which is like, okay, at least that's like a number versus like high body. What's a high body count like on average? So like that would mean a person who has 5 sexual partners over the course of their life. That is literally high because it is higher than the average. But like, is that a thing that you're gonna? The only reason I can conceive of being concerned about a 5 count body count would be if you're nervous about being compared, and then at that point, then any body count is a potential point of comparison. So what does it matter whether it's 1 or 5? Like, you can still suck at sex compared to that person. You can still have a small penis compared to the 1 versus the 5 just as easily. I guess it's a probability question. But for the more than 100, uh again, this is too rare to care about. Like, very very few individuals have a 100 plus body count. I do think that there is a connection between body count and like suitability for long-term monogamous partnership. Not in that like a person with a high body count is incapable by any stretch of the imagination of monogamy and partnership, but like
Maybe they're just
people
not
who are
interested.
high in socio wait, sorry?
Oh, you froze. Maybe they're just not interested in having a long-term monogamous relationship.
Yeah, no, totally. That's what I was gonna say. Like, people who are high in sociosexuality, all else equal, do tend to be statistically less interested in monogamy. So, I mean, that's fair enough. But like this thought that they're like incapable of it, or somebody was saying they're mentally ill, or they're broken, or it's a spectrum. People have different preferences. It's not indicative of brokenness.
Necessarily, right? Any more than you can be depending on what's motivating your behavior. That's what defines it, right? You could be a
Totally.
one person virgin when you get married, and if it's for messed up reasons, then that's messed up, right?
Yeah, or a virgin, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing necessarily wrong with virginity, or, I mean, virginity is a construct, a late sexual debut, as the researchers say, or however
A
you
late
want to talk
sexual
about.
debut. Huh. Well, yeah, I don't. Okay. Or you could be not late and just get married early. I mean, I was 18. That's not late for a first sexual experience, I would think.
No, no, it isn't. It's
But
actually
I was
probably early.
early, yeah. Yes. So there's all that. You know, but it's not so wait. Let's see. So, but
Um,
it is interesting the way that show uh interweaves like modern
mhm.
cultural touch points with the old ones. It's kind of, but it's very entertaining. Like it's I mean, like a lot of these period dramas are, I mean, the costuming and the scenery, and it's all very beautiful.
I also just think it's really fun that that's like a real thing that happened. Did they call them dollar princesses?
Dollar princesses, buccaneers was the expression, and then um, remember there was another expression. Um, the the character in Downton Abbey, she was one. She saved. I can't remember what the mom's name was, but she saved Downton Abbey in the same way. Yeah.
I started to watch season 1 and yeah, the tone was not working for me. Like I really liked it in Catherine the Great, the Great, but I did not it wasn't working for me in Buccaneers. Do you think season 2 is different or better or
Um, I would fast forward through like the w- the contemporary music scenes. I was just like, I don't need that. You know, they're,
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about, they're really quite, they're supposed to be quite young. So, and I find it kind of interesting. They really maximize this relationship between these two sets of sisters and another friend, and they've been friends since they were little girls. I mean, it's okay. It's a little bit mindless, and not. It's interesting that it's obviously based on something that actually happened, but it's so much more fictionalized than. Yeah, but it's kind of fun. It's not. I wouldn't call it serious, but kind of fun. The boys are very cute in it, and the women are very pretty.
That matters. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, did you see the announcement about the launch of The Argument?
Nope.
Okay. There is a new publication. And so Jerusalem Demsis was a staff writer at The Atlantic, and she's
Mhm.
left The Atlantic to start a new publication on Substack called The Argument. And it's basically Abundance, the magazine, the you know, pro liberalism, pro building things
Mhm.
Democrats. And yeah, they've published 2 things, or I've seen 2 things so far, and I've liked them both. Today's was Jordan Weissman wrote about an argument for immigration, and I was really surprised when I published my article about why fertility is still necessary. Um, immigration alone can't solve the problems
Uh-huh.
caused by low fertility. I was surprised about the extent to which people pushed back on the idea that like economic growth was important. Uh, yeah.
Hmm.
And so he was making the case, that economic growth is important, and we need like his point is that fertility isn't enough, right? Like
Mm.
we don't have a time machine to go back 18 years and boost the fertility rate. And I think that's true. But he made a good point about how one of the reasons you want growth is because otherwise you have to choose between a generous welfare state and a very high rate of taxation. And economic growth
Growth
is like the
levels
hack
that
to
out.
avoid that trade-off.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was like a good I love it when people articulate something that's once you hear it, it's obvious, but I didn't think to articulate it that way in
Yeah.
my post.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. I kind of feel like that's really the opportunity that I see for good stuff is, like, the abundance. I don't really see the, mm, kind of far left doing things that are useful right now. I don't see the right doing things that are useful. I think there's an extent to which the business community has an incentive to rein in the autocracy. And if they're not able to do it on the right, because I don't know, I guess the cult of Trump, then maybe they do it through the the argument or the moderate Dem side, the abundance movement.
I did well, I was gone in Virginia, had dinner and with the group of people that we're working with, and one is the president of a company. He said that he hates working on contracts in California because it's so difficult to grow there because of the labor laws and the restrictions and stuff. And that kind of speaks to how long they can only face that. And I've actually been thinking more about this and thinking, wow, that's like kind of against what my brain naturally wants to tell me. But I think if you can't grow, if it becomes so restrictive for small businesses, and really that's, where the growth happens is to grow, then they do have to go somewhere else, right? In-N-Out Burger left California, they've moved their headquarters to Tennessee, which means just up the road, there's a In-N-Out Burger now. Road trip. But yeah, no, it's just so there is you can't you have to have growth, right? And it has to be enough to motivate people to invest in your community. And if it's too restrictive, oh no, I might sound like a libertarian a little bit, but if it's too restrictive, it does limit the growth. And that means that the tax burden, the debt burden is greater and people can't get the services they need. So I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna start going thinking differently about some of these things. I don't know.
That you have a very good orientation. I think the thing that I keep thinking about is Jordan's article was talking about how we cannot have low population growth and economic growth at the same time. Like
Mhm,
that's not going to work. And the right has basically decided that um like these games are zero sum. We're going to play zero sum games. We're just going to have lower growth. We're going to fight over what exists instead of looking at like how do we grow the pie, so to
mhm,
speak. And the far left has kind of been there, unfortunately, for a long time of like, let's fight over the divvying
mhm,
of the pie rather than thinking about how to grow it. And I would say, like, that's probably one of the best things I can say for libertarianism is libertarians have a very strong intuition of like there are a lot of positive sum games to play in the world and we should probably play as many of them as possible. I think they go into the realm of thinking every game is positive sum and it's not. There's a little wishful thinking in that. But I like the orientation of like, let's go in assuming that this can be a positive sum game and like figure out
mhm,
how to play it that way. The insight that a bunch of people going after their own personal best interest, if done cooperatively and with innovation, like creativity, can make everybody better off on net. Like that's a wonderful insight. That's a really important insight. The
mhm,
growth of living standards is, you know, rests upon that insight. But it's just I guess that's where I'm kind of going with the abundance thing is that like the left and the right both seem to have abandoned that. And so somebody has got to step up and be like, no, I mean, we can have better. We don't have to fight over what exists I mean, we do have to do a little bit of fighting over what exists, obviously, but
Mhm.
like, it's not all there is. We can also create more stuff out of the same amount of stuff. That's a
Yeah.
thing we know how we've done before and we can keep doing.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, another thing I thought was interesting about where is the right going with all this is so I have a friend named Jordan McGillis, and he's a economics editor at City Journal, which is a Manhattan Institute publication. He just published an op-ed in the Washington Post about the high cost of childcare, and I am very curious about why the Manhattan Institute is caring about the cost of childcare right now. That seems like it could
So
be a
what
good
tell me
development.
about the Manhattan Institute. What's their point of view?
I mean, as far as I can tell, pretty arch conservative.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, like,
Those people just want, I mean, not the Manhattan Institute, but some of those right wing, they just want me to go babysit my grandchildren instead of instead of having affordable childcare.
yeah.
Who is that? Yeah.
Well, but
Jane
see, and that's
Vance
where
said
it's so
that.
interesting is that, like, you would think being funded by the right, you would prefer, well, I guess that's the, because I was going to say,
Yeah.
well, a lot of the right is no, the mom should stay home.
Mhm.
Um, but if the mom's home, she's not in the labor force, and women's being part of the labor force has been a huge net positive for these businesses. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, if you get the grandma to do the childcare, then you get the woman in the workforce, and you don't have to pay uh, for the childcare as a company or as a government.
Mhm.
So that would be. But so yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're
But
focusing on that now.
yeah, that is interesting. Hmm. My brain's not firing on all of its regular cylinders because I have such a bad headache, but I'm just so sorry. I'm kind of slow.
Thank you for
Um,
coming anyway. I'm so
well,
sorry
I've
you're in
missed you. I
pain.
want to see you.
I've missed you too. I've missed hanging out, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we started doing this, and I can't wait to, I guess it's not going to be too long till we go on the next girls trip.
Yes. Yes. That'll be good. I think I'm looking forward to it. As we've said, and for people who are listening, it's a slow night. There's only 13. I think we usually are better than that. But this trip that Kathy and I met on is someone organized it maybe 15 years ago or something. And she kind of invites people. And the year before Kathy and I went, I thought it was this liberal group in our community until I'm in the car driving to Tennessee when I discovered there are going to be Trumpers at this weekend. And, it was wild, and I almost didn't go the next time, and then a friend of mine said, "Oh, Kathy's gonna be there, you're gonna love her," and I went anyway, and it happened, and also, I came to appreciate some of the more right-wing people, and so I was glad that I got to know them better. So this year, some of those same people are gonna be there, and, so we'll see.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same. Well, I didn't. I did find out before I left that it was going to be a mixed ideology group, and I I was not. I was surprised. I don't know if I was upset or not. I think I was a little bit like, huh. But I'm very grateful having done it that it is. I think it's sad that we would see feel any differently, you know? I think it's sad that we would even have the thought of like, "Oh, maybe I don't wanna spend a weekend with
Well,
people who voted
yes, but
differently,"
it
but
was 2 days after the elections
yeah.
this year, so
Yeah.
it was a little
Yeah.
bit different, the
Yeah.
timing. Yeah, it was 2 days after the election. We left on Thursday after Trump winning on
Mm.
Tuesday, so that is a little bit different, but you know what? It wasn't an issue at all.
No.
No one was,
Well, it's verboten actually to talk about
yeah,
politics,
yeah,
which I think is probably good. It's just, you know, it's weird for me to be in any social environment where people aren't talking about politics. Like, that's just
yeah,
that in and of
that's
itself is strange for me.
and for me, yeah. That's just always something I've liked to talk about. So I do. Yeah, Julian's right. Mixed ideology doesn't really mean what it did a decade ago. I think that's the hardest part. You know, when you meet somebody who was like a regular Republican, like just a normal mainstream Republican, I really feel badly for them. I feel badly that the Mitch McConnells and the all those people just rolled over and just said, "Oh, here, just take our Republican Party," and they abandoned the people who I used to be able to have conversations with, where we could agree, okay, everyone should have affordable health care, everyone should have education, a roof over their head, be safe in their communities, and maybe we disagreed on how to get there, but we all agreed on that, and now we can't. It's become so well, it's the name calling, I just can't stand that. I don't do it, and I don't know why it's gotten to that point where it's just name calling and ridiculousness, and you can't have a conversation.
They're so afraid. That's what I listened to the Ezra Klein interview with, Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia student graduate
Mhm,
student who the federal government disappear tried to disappear.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, the whole purpose was to scare people into being silent, to dissuade people from saying things the administration doesn't want them to say. And it's just so pathetic that they're
Yeah,
so afraid of this guy and the many people he represents just stating what he thinks. Um but yeah, I mean, and like I was always Republican, then I was a libertarian, which kind of meant being a Republican because of bad choices the libertarians made, and then moved to California and started being a Democrat, both because the Republican Party was going MAGA and because you have to be a Democrat to get anything done in California, or especially
yeah.
where I was. But like when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know that I'm like more of a Democrat than I am at like a normal Republican, you know? Like depends on who you ask, in terms of like where the dividing lines are. Um
But see, I mean, I could never be a Republican, ever.
yeah.
I mean, as long as their platform includes, being against choice for women and, I couldn't ever support that.
Okay.
I saw, oh, well, let's go to that. I saw, I just was walking past the TV and I saw some hearing about keeping women keeping sports safe for girls. I was just like, "This is so dumb." We talked about that last time, didn't we? Um, it's so ridiculous. Did you go into the metro since you've been there?
Yeah, it
Did you
was
see the
pretty
National
normal.
Guardsmen
No,
people?
no, there was, it wasn't on my train, but it was somebody else said that they saw FBI agents just standing around, in one of the stations. Um, I've seen, like, police standing around, but no, I mean, they can't actually do anything proactive. They have to, like, a crime has to be committed, and then I think the police have to, like,
Mm.
deputize them to do anything, but I'm sure there's some kind of deterrent effect. I mean, I the research is actually indicates that there is a big deterrent effect
You see a guy with a
to people just
machine
seeing
gun
them. Yeah.
walking up and down the platform in a camo uniform. That would deter me if I were, thinking of mugging somebody.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Actually, we've been kind of insulated from that kind of thing in public transportation. I remember the first time I went to Europe, which was in the 90s, and seeing the airport at Charles de Gaulle Airport, they were armed, you know, I don't know if they're police or military or whatever, their rules are different. But yeah, with German shepherds and automatic weapons. I wasn't used to seeing that in the United States. And
Yeah.
of course, places like Israel have always been that way.
Yeah, I remember my parents telling me about going to Germany and, like, how police in Germany are super well comparatively, like, well trained, well educated, well respected, well compensated. They're professionals and they're,
Hmm.
like, hired and paid and treated like professionals, and I was like, "That just seems like an obviously way better way to do things. Like, why are we so backwards?"
I
Uh,
worked for a security guard services company
hmm.
and not as a guard in business development, but that was like one of my first business development jobs. And they had guards in uh, unarmed guards at construction sites for embassies and consulates around the world, but they also had security guard services jobs in federal buildings in DC. And it was shocking how little money they paid people who were carrying around loaded weapons. I was really, really shocked at how, and also how little education these people didn't need to have really any education, and they carried loaded weapons. And I was just like, whoa, what's happening? But
Yeah.
like to see local cops arrest a few feds for loitering, given how useless and performative this occupation is. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the only use of broken windows policing that I, approve of.
Oh, the just what part of it?
Well, the theory of broken windows policing is that
N-
if
Oh, I
you
know that, but
uh-huh.
what about the theory? Is it the only piece that you agree with?
This is an instance where I support arresting people merely for
Oh, oh,
loitering.
sorry. Yeah. Did you read the original Freakonomics book? I mean, I mean, now it's been. I probably came out.
I don't remember, maybe, but I definitely listened to a lot of the podcast.
Yeah, and then when they revisited it, they part of that was they. I think the broken windows theory was there were parts of it that were kind of there was causation, but then they were able to also kind of decompose some of the things that were less causal and more just correlated and um I don't know. There were lots of things about the '80s that were and the crime in DC and New York, for example, that were I don't know that I never felt scared, and I was in DC. I did a couple of internships in DC during the '80s, and I never felt scared.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I did a deep dive on broken windows policing. I actually got paid to do it. It was cool. Then I think they ended up not using what I wrote because they didn't like it. But uh, I published what I edited a little bit and then published it. But yeah, I mean, it's probably one of those things where like if if the theory is that you know a person is less likely to do to do a crime if they see that crime is tolerated, like, sure, I can believe that. But when I looked at the data on how broken windows policing has actually been implemented in US cities, it's unambiguous that mm, it doesn't work and it creates a lot of problems along the way.
Well, and
Like, it
I
doesn't
I mean,
actually reduce violent like, the
yeah,
crimes you would care about,
yeah,
and you end up just encouraging police to make a lot of, stops of primarily brown men, low-income brown men.
yeah,
In the case of New York, it was like 99.9% of whom
yeah,
were not committing any crime, and that obviously, like, erodes the relationship between police and their
yeah,
communities, which is like, again, according to the data, the last thing you'd want to do if you want to reduce crime. You want a good relationship between police and the communities they're supposed to be serving.
yeah. I used to think about that a lot more than I do now, but I like but, it's something that people can point to, and that's why Trump has the National Guard because, you know, crime rate so bad, blah, 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 blah.
And I think there's something there that Democrats do have to answer for in terms of the crime and even more than the crime, the disorder of Democrat run cities. The broken windows makes yeah, I guess getting rid of the broken windows does make the infrastructure look better.
Well, and that was part of it, right? If the community looks less, blighted,
Right.
right, then it does change attitudes about it, but that's different than the policies of the stop and frisk policies, which were part of that.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's what Julian, it sounds like you're
yeah,
saying that, like,
exactly.
yeah, that's what I'm yeah, I think we're all on the same page that, like,
Yeah,
there's the theory and the practice.
yeah. I mean, I don't think there's, it's I don't I'm not a researcher, but I do think that if things look nice, you behave differently. I do. I think that it's got to be. If you feel like your community is clean and it looks healthy, then people may take more pride in it.
And if things look bad, people vote differently, and I think that's what we're seeing is that cities look bad, and they don't need to, but they do, and so people say, "Well, this is what happens when Democrats run things." And that's not a good look for us. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
for them, us, and so I think that's something we need to take responsibility for and deal with is, like, if we can't run our cities, how are we supposed to get people to trust us to run our country?
Hmm.
And
But do we know that? But I mean, but if you look at those giant cities, they're giant cities and they're like how do you know that the Republican-led cities are doing better?
Uh, well, I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know about the comparison. Like, once you hold things equal, like, how does it compare? But I'll tell you, living in San Francisco, living in DC, living in San Francisco, and living in Huntsville, Alabama,
Mhm.
it's very different. Like, they are
Yes,
governed very differently.
right, but you can see that it's different, but there are all kinds of differences about them,
Yeah, no, for
right?
sure. That's
Size
what I'm
for one,
saying.
right? Huntsville is comparatively a small town compared to San Francisco or Washington, DC,
Mhm. Yeah,
right? So it
yeah. Well, yeah, so my mother, Michelle, she said, crime statistics are better. I assume you mean in Republican, controlled cities, but I mean, that's definitely not true for San Francisco. San Francisco, well, it depends on the crime. So, property crime is much worse in San Francisco than a place like Huntsville, but violent crime is actually very, very low in San Francisco, even versus a city like Huntsville.
well, and again, you can't in my view, having lived lots of places and stuff, I don't see how you can even compare a Huntsville to a San Francisco or to New York or to Washington, DC, or Los Angeles.
There's nothing, well, yeah, I mean, in America, larger cities tend to have more crime per capita. I don't that doesn't I don't know that that's a inherent feature of cities. Like, Tokyo has an extremely low crime rate. It's a much bigger city than any
Yes,
of the ones we
it's
have in
clean.
America.
Yes, yes, it's clean and
But I think we can, I mean, I feel confident saying, uh yeah, I don't think it's inherently harder to, like, pick up the trash in San Francisco than it is in Huntsville. Like, I just don't believe that. Like, I think the cities are just, I think San Francisco is more poorly governed, and that's why it's
mm,
full of trash. Like, I think their union contracts are worse. I think that their
mhm,
oversight is lacking. Like, it's not an inherent limitation of, like, the population density. It's like
mhm.
these people are making bad
Now,
choices
I'm
because
not
they're
arguing that they're
constrained.
not disgusting. I don't like New York. I don't like, if I'm gonna go there and people say, "Oh, I wanna go to New York," I say, "Well, my recommendation is go in spring or fall because in the summer, it just reeks to high heaven. In the winter, it's so darn cold." You know? But I wouldn't say that I like visiting there. I have a child who lives there and a grandchild, so I do, but, you know, I wouldn't say, "Oh, I feel grimy after walking down the streets. I have a headache because the smell of pot and piss and garbage gives me a headache," and, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
say I like that.
Hot take.
But but I do think that there is and I don't know how to fix this. I drove back I went to coffee with some friends, and I drove back, and there were some in Huntsville, there were some boarded up buildings and stuff, and I don't and because those things, you're more likely to see them in neighborhoods where brown and black people live, and then how do you disconnect? I mean, that's the problem, right? We start to connect these places with blight, with non-white people, and then we tie them as humans and individuals to the problems, and I I think it's so much more institutional than that. The institutions that we've built have created these problems that have created these, you know, the blight and the economic despair and stuff, you know? So but it gets, I think, kind of turned around.
Yeah. Um,
Tokyo is culturally different, that's for sure.
yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Um,
And
it's
and
super
there is
interesting.
and safe, and I don't know, the whole, but part of it is Japan has a different, like Michelle says, it is culturally different. The group is more important than the individual. That's
That's
the
true.
And it's
That's
also
true.
much more homogenous.
Yeah, that's those things are true. I do think though that so from what I've read, what the two most important things for deterring crime are so by and large the likelihood and severity of sorry, not the likelihood, the severity of punishment for a crime is absolutely no deterrent. Whether you face a slap on the wrist or the death penalty has no impact on how likely someone is to commit a crime, even if they know that. What does prevent crime is the likelihood of getting punished and the swiftness of getting punished. And one thing that Japan has over the United States is that um, if you commit a crime, the police are very likely to arrest you. And once you're arrested, you've got like a 99% likelihood of being convicted.
Yeah.
Um, and that got its own problems, obviously, but it does work. And so it's like, yeah, we can't in the United States of America, overnight create a culture of homogeneity and collectivism, but we could like have cops who do their jobs and like actually investigate crimes and make arrests after after these crimes are committed, and that would increase our level of public safety.
What was the thing about skunks? The most interesting parts of Denver smell like 100 skunks have just encountered a beagle.
I think that's a combo of, like, skunky weed and garbage.
Oh.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I would say so. The last time I went to Bangkok, it had been 2 years since I've been there, and they'd legalized pot
to
in
where?
in Bangkok,
Uh-huh.
and, I've never liked the smell of it. I'm very sensitive to all kinds of smells, and it gives me an instant headache, and so now I go to Bangkok and I get a headache, and so really love this. It's really yeah.
Gwen is a drug warrior just to avoid migraines.
Yeah, I think it should be completely decriminalized, and I think they should stop testing for pot in for jobs, and I think that, but I don't like it just being everywhere you go in a city because that's a personal problem. But I mean, as public policy goes, I really think it's ridiculous that we test people for pot and then we just let people drink all the alcohol they want and you know kick their dog and scream at their children and punch a hole in the wall and go to work and then you know they smoked pot in the last 30 days. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't be hired for this job. That's so stupid.
It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Okay. I I committed to myself to be on an hour because
Okay.
I'm with my family, and, I should spend time with them,
Yep.
but I'm so glad that we did it.
I am
Thank you,
too.
Gwen.
Well, thank you because I don't want to get out of the habit and I know I didn't feel well a couple weeks ago. And so thanks everyone for joining us and letting me sit in the bed and kind of be squinty all day from, but it'll be gone tomorrow. I've decided I'm gonna take something. I'm gonna sleep really hard, not make myself get up too early, and hopefully this headache will go away.
You got it. I believe in you. Take
Yeah.
care of yourself.
All right. Thanks everyone. See you next
Thanks
week.
for coming, guys.
Bye.
Bye.